August 1, 1943. Dawn breaks over the Libyan desert as 178 American B-24 Liberator bombers lumber into the sky from airfields near Benghazi. Their engines strain under maximum fuel loads and 4,000 pounds of bombs per aircraft. The destination lies 1,350 miles away across the Mediterranean Sea, Ploești, Romania, home to the largest oil refineries in Europe and the source of nearly one-third of Nazi Germany's fuel supply. The mission, codenamed Operation Tidal Wave, represents one of the most daring and dangerous bombing raids ever attempted. Flying at treetop level to evade radar, the bombers will navigate across enemy territory without fighter escort for most of the journey. Their target, 11 oil refineries protected by more anti-aircraft guns than any location in Europe except the Ruhr Valley. Intelligence estimates suggest 30% casualties. The reality will prove far worse. This raid and the subsequent bombing campaign against Ploești would become legendary in military aviation history, a testament to extraordinary courage, devastating losses, and the brutal arithmetic of strategic bombing. 5 Congressional Medals of Honor would be awarded for a single mission, more than any other air operation in American history. Before the campaign ended in August 1944, hundreds of bombers would fall from Romanian skies, thousands of airmen would die or face captivity, and the question would haunt survivors: was it worth the price? This is the story of the Ploești oil raids, where strategic necessity, technological capability, and human courage collided with the stark realities of modern warfare. Ploești's importance to the Axis war machine cannot be overstated. Located 35 miles north of Bucharest in the Wallachian Plain, the refineries at Ploești represented Europe's second-largest oil production center after the Soviet fields at Baku. In 1943, these facilities produced approximately 10 million tons of petroleum products annually, providing roughly 30% of Germany's total fuel requirements and 60% of its crude oil imports. The geology of the Ploești region had blessed Romania with substantial oil reserves discovered in the late 19th century. By World War II, the area contained 11 major refineries with names that would become infamous to American bomber crews: Romana Americana, Concordia Vega, Standard Petrol, Columbia Aquila, Creditul Minier, Unirea Orion, Unirea Speranta, Astra Romana, and Stoa Romana. These facilities could process crude oil into aviation gasoline, diesel fuel, kerosene, and lubricants essential for mechanized warfare. German military planners understood Ploești's critical importance. Without Romanian oil, the Luftwaffe would be grounded, the Wehrmacht's panzer divisions immobilized, and the Kriegsmarine's U-boats harbor-bound. The entire Nazi war machine depended on a steady flow of petroleum products from these Romanian refineries. Protecting this vital resource became a strategic imperative that would reshape Romania's defensive infrastructure. By 1943, Ploești had become one of the most heavily defended targets in occupied Europe. The Germans and Romanians installed over 200 heavy anti-aircraft guns around the refineries, 88 mm, and 105 weapons capable of reaching bombers at any altitude. Hundreds of lighter automatic cannons, 20 mm, 37 and 40 guns, created interlocking fields of fire at lower altitudes. Smoke generators could blanket the entire target area within minutes. Barrage balloons floated above key facilities, their steel cables ready to slice through aircraft. German fighter squadrons stationed nearby could scramble interceptors within minutes of an alert. Allied intelligence had monitored Ploești since 1940. High-altitude reconnaissance flights documented the refinery's layouts, production capacities, and defensive preparations. Strategic planners debated various approaches. High-altitude precision bombing offered crew safety but reduced accuracy. Low-level attacks promised greater precision, but exposed aircraft to devastating defensive fire. The compromise that emerged would attempt the worst of both worlds: a low-level approach followed by bombing from medium altitude. The first American attack on Ploești occurred on June 11, 1942, when 13 B-24 Liberators of the Haverson Project struck the refineries while en route from Egypt to China. Flying from Egypt, these bombers attacked at night from medium altitude. Results were negligible, minor damage, no significant impact on production. However, the raid alerted German commanders to Allied intentions and triggered a massive buildup of Ploești's defenses. For the next 14 months, Ploești remained untouched while Allied planners developed more ambitious schemes. The catalyst came in early 1943 when strategic planners recognized that destroying Ploești could cripple German mechanized operations. The combined bomber offensive strategy emphasized destroying Germany's ability to wage war by targeting critical industries. Oil production ranked among the highest priorities. Planning for Operation Tidal Wave began in earnest in spring 1943. The concept was revolutionary and extraordinarily risky. Bombers would fly an 1,350-mile round trip from Libya, approaching Romania at low altitude to avoid radar detection. They would attack from treetop level, 50 to 300 feet, to maximize accuracy and surprise. Delayed action fuses would allow aircraft to escape before bombs detonated. 5 bombing groups would hit different refineries simultaneously, overwhelming defenses through sheer numbers and speed. The plan required meticulous preparation. Crews trained intensively at a full-scale mock-up of Ploești constructed in the Libyan desert. Pilots practiced low-level navigation and bombing runs repeatedly. Navigators studied recognition points along the route, rivers, mountains, towns, that would guide them across hundreds of miles of enemy territory. Bombardiers memorized target layouts from photographs and models. Everyone understood the stakes and the risks. At 400 hours on August 1, 1943, the first B-24s began taking off from 5 airfields around Benghazi. The armada of 178 bombers represented 5 bomb groups: the 44th, 93rd, 98th, 376th, and 389th. Each aircraft carried maximum fuel loads in auxiliary tanks, reducing bomb capacity but extending range. Crew members wore personal sidearms, escape kits, and survival gear. Many carried letters to be mailed if they didn't return. The flight plan called for precise navigation across the Mediterranean to Corfu, then inland across Albania and Yugoslavia to the initial point near Romania's Danube River. From there, different groups would peel off toward assigned refineries. The entire operation depended on surprise, speed, and overwhelming the defenses before they could react effectively. Problems began immediately. One bomber crashed on takeoff, killing all aboard. Others turned back with mechanical failures. As the formation crossed the Mediterranean, a navigation error led some groups off course. The tight schedule began unraveling. Most critically, the element of surprise was lost when the formation was spotted and reported to German defenses hours before reaching the target. Lieutenant General Alfred Gerstenberg, commanding Ploești's defenses, received warning that a large bomber force was approaching. He placed all anti-aircraft batteries on full alert and scrambled fighter squadrons. Smoke generators began producing thick black clouds over the refineries. The trap was set. As the bombers approached Ploești around 1200 hours, navigation errors compounded. Some groups missed their turning points, became separated, and arrived over the target area from wrong directions. The carefully coordinated simultaneous attack dissolved into confusion. Groups attacked piecemeal rather than overwhelming defenses all at once. The 376th and 93rd bomb groups, approaching from the south, mistakenly flew toward Bucharest instead of Ploești. Recognizing their error, they turned back, but precious time and fuel were lost, and surprise was completely gone. When they finally reached their targets, defenses were fully alert and waiting. The horror that unfolded over the next 30 minutes would become legendary in aviation history. American bombers roared over Romanian refineries at chimney height, while every anti-aircraft weapon in the area opened fire. The sky filled with tracers, shell bursts, and smoke. Bombers flew through forests of flak, trailing fire and smoke. Some collided with barrage balloon cables and cartwheeled into the ground. Others, hit by anti-aircraft fire, exploded in midair or plunged into refinery complexes they were trying to bomb. Colonel John Kane, leading the 98th Bomb Group, pressed his attack despite seeing bombers ahead of him shot down in flames. His group flew directly through the inferno of defensive fire, bombing their assigned refineries while aircraft disintegrated around them. Kane's actions would earn him the Medal of Honor. Colonel Leon Johnson's 44th Bomb Group attacked the Treetop Minier and Columbia Aquila refineries in the face of withering fire. His formation suffered catastrophic losses, aircraft exploding, crashing, burning. Johnson continued the attack, pressing through the maelstrom. He too would receive the Medal of Honor. Lieutenant Colonel Addison Baker, deputy commander of the 93rd Bomb Group, was flying the lead aircraft, Hell's Wench, when it was hit by anti-aircraft fire and caught fire. Rather than abort, Baker continued leading his formation to the target, knowing his blazing aircraft served as a guide for following bombers. He completed the bomb run before his B-24 crashed in flames. Baker received a posthumous Medal of Honor. Major John Jerstad, also in the 93rd Bomb Group, had already completed his required combat tour but volunteered for the Ploești mission because of his navigation experience. Flying in the same formation as Baker, Jerstad's aircraft was also hit and set ablaze. He too continued to the target before crashing. Posthumous Medal of Honor. Second Lieutenant Lloyd Hughes, pilot of a 389th Bomb Group B-24, had his aircraft hit during the approach, rupturing fuel tanks. Gasoline streamed from the damaged bomber and flames licked along the fuselage. Despite the mortal damage, Hughes maintained formation and completed his bombing run before the aircraft crashed and exploded. Posthumous Medal of Honor. 5 Congressional Medals of Honor for a single mission, unprecedented in American military aviation history. But the honors came at terrible cost. German and Romanian fighter aircraft joined the slaughter. Messerschmitt Bf-109s and Bf-110s, along with Romanian IAR-80s, attacked the bombers throughout their withdrawal. American aircraft, having dropped their bombs and burned most of their fuel during the long approach, were lighter and could fly faster on the return journey, but many were damaged and struggling to stay airborne. The carnage was devastating. Of 178 bombers that launched the mission, 54 were lost, a 30% casualty rate, exactly as intelligence had predicted. Some crashed in Romania. Others, damaged and burning, struggled across Yugoslavia before falling from the sky. A few made emergency landings in neutral Turkey and were interned. Several ditched in the Mediterranean when fuel ran out. The human cost was staggering. 660 airmen were killed, wounded, or captured. Those who made it back to Libya brought shot-up aircraft riddled with hundreds of holes. Some bombers landed with dead or wounded crewmen aboard, engines smoking, hydraulic systems failed, tires blown out. Maintenance crews counted the damage in stunned silence. One B-24 had over 2,000 holes from flak and bullets. Initial reports claimed the raid had been successful, with significant damage to Ploești's refineries. Post-mission reconnaissance showed fires burning and smoke rising from multiple facilities. American newspapers trumpeted the raid as a major victory. The awarding of 5 Medals of Honor reinforced the narrative of heroic achievement. The reality was far more sobering. While several refineries had been hit and damaged, Romanian and German engineers had production restored within weeks. The Romana Americana refinery, hardest hit during the raid, was back to partial production within days and full production within weeks. Overall, Ploești's oil production declined by approximately 40% immediately after the raid, but recovered to pre-raid levels by September 1943. The strategic impact fell far short of expectations. Germany's oil supplies were temporarily disrupted but not critically damaged. The Axis war machine continued operating with only minor adjustments. The massive casualties and aircraft losses made Operation Tidal Wave one of the costliest failures of the American strategic bombing campaign. Military analysts debated the raid's value for decades afterward. The low-level attack, while dramatic and demonstrating extraordinary courage, exposed bombers to every defensive weapon Ploești possessed. High-altitude precision bombing, though less accurate, would have resulted in far fewer casualties. The navigation errors that disrupted the coordinated attack plan turned a calculated risk into a catastrophe. The raid did achieve one unintended consequence. It demonstrated that Ploești was vulnerable. While the immediate damage was repaired quickly, German commanders realized that sustained bombing could eventually destroy the refineries. This recognition influenced strategic decisions and forced reallocation of defensive resources to Romania. After the August 1943 disaster, American planners avoided Ploești for nearly a year. The 15th Air Force, established in Italy in November 1943, had the range to reach Romanian targets but focused on other objectives. Ploești remained too dangerous, its defenses too formidable. The memories of Tidal Wave too fresh. The strategic situation changed in spring 1944. With Allied forces advancing in Italy and the Soviet Union pressing from the east, American planners recognized that sustained attacks on Ploești could achieve what the single massive raid had not: permanent destruction of Germany's primary oil source. In April 1944, the 15th Air Force began a systematic bombing campaign against Romanian oil facilities. Unlike the low-level attack of 1943, the 1944 raids employed high-altitude precision bombing from 20,000 feet or higher. Large formations of B-17 Flying Fortresses and B-24 Liberators, escorted by P-38 Lightning and P-51 Mustang fighters, attacked Ploești repeatedly throughout spring and summer 1944. The strategy was attrition: hit the refineries again and again, preventing repairs, grinding down production capacity through cumulative damage. The raids were costly but more sustainable than Tidal Wave. Losses averaged 5–8% per mission, painful but acceptable compared to the 30% casualty rate of August 1943. Fighter escorts helped protect bombers from German interceptors. High altitude reduced exposure to light anti-aircraft weapons, though heavy flak remained deadly. Between April 5 and August 19, 1944, the 15th Air Force launched 24 major raids against Ploești. Thousands of tons of bombs fell on the refineries. Production declined steadily as damage accumulated faster than repairs could restore capacity. By June 1944, Ploești's output had fallen to 50% of pre-bombing levels. By August, production was down to 10% of capacity. The human cost continued mounting. Hundreds of bombers were shot down over Romania during the 1944 campaign. Thousands more returned damaged. American and Allied aircrews who survived being shot down faced uncertain fates. Some were captured by Romanian forces and held as prisoners of war. Others were hidden by Romanian civilians who risked execution to shelter Allied airmen. A few made contact with Romanian resistance groups and were smuggled to neutral territory. German defenses remained formidable throughout the campaign. Flak batteries continued exacting a heavy toll. Luftwaffe fighter units, though increasingly depleted, fought with skill and determination. Romanian fighter pilots defended their homeland with courage, even as many questioned whether they were fighting for the right side. By August 1944, the strategic situation had shifted dramatically. Soviet forces had launched massive offensives that were crushing German Army Group South Ukraine and driving toward the Romanian border. King Michael of Romania, recognizing that Germany had lost the war, was negotiating a secret armistice with the Allies. On August 19, 1944, the 15th Air Force launched its final major raid against Ploești. Over 200 bombers attacked the already devastated refineries, adding to the cumulative destruction. 3 days later, Soviet forces launched Operation Tidal, smashing through German and Romanian defenses. On August 23, 1944, King Michael ordered Romanian forces to cease fighting the Allies and turn against Germany. Romania switched sides, joining the Allies. German troops in Romania found themselves surrounded by former allies who were now enemies. The refineries at Ploești, or what remained of them, fell into Soviet hands by August 30, 1944. The Ploești oil campaign was over. The refineries lay in ruins, their smokestacks toppled, their processing units destroyed, their storage tanks empty. What German engineers and Romanian workers had built over decades had been systematically demolished through 15 months of sustained bombing. Assessing the Ploești oil campaign requires examining multiple dimensions: strategic impact, operational execution, and human cost. Strategically, the campaign achieved its ultimate objective. By August 1944, Ploești's oil production had been effectively eliminated. Germany lost access to its primary fuel source at a critical moment. The Wehrmacht's mechanized divisions faced crippling fuel shortages during the summer 1944 battles in France and the Soviet Union. The Luftwaffe's fighter forces were grounded by lack of aviation gasoline during crucial periods when Allied bombers needed to be intercepted. German synthetic oil production partially compensated for Ploești's loss, but never fully replaced Romanian output. Did the bombing campaign hasten Germany's defeat? Almost certainly. Fuel shortages constrained German military operations throughout late 1944 and early 1945. Panzer divisions that might have counterattacked Allied advances sat immobilized for lack of fuel. Fighter aircraft that could have defended German cities remained on the ground. The strategic paralysis caused by oil shortages contributed significantly to Germany's final collapse. However, the victory came at enormous cost. Operation Tidal Wave alone cost 54 bombers and 660 casualties for minimal lasting damage. The entire campaign from 1943-19 foresaw approximately 350 American bombers shot down over Ploești in Romania, with over 3,000 airmen killed, wounded, or captured. Romanian civilians and workers at the refineries also suffered casualties, though exact numbers remain uncertain. Could the same result have been achieved differently? Perhaps. Some analysts argue that the resources devoted to attacking Ploești could have been used more effectively against other targets. Germany's synthetic oil plants, concentrated in Germany proper, might have been more vulnerable to systematic attack. Others contend that attacking Ploești was strategically sound, but that the low-level tidal wave raid was a costly mistake that should never have been attempted. The courage displayed by American aircrews at Ploești is beyond question. Flying into the teeth of the most intense anti-aircraft fire in Europe, knowing that casualties would be catastrophic, thousands of young men pressed their attacks with extraordinary valor. The 5 Congressional Medals of Honor awarded for the August 1943 raid represent just a fraction of the heroism displayed over Romanian skies during 15 months of brutal combat. For Romania, the Ploești campaign had profound consequences. The country's most valuable economic asset was destroyed. Thousands of Romanian workers lost their livelihoods. The areas surrounding Ploești suffered environmental damage from oil fires and chemical contamination that persisted for years. Romania switched to the Allied side in August 1944, while motivated by multiple factors, was partly influenced by the devastation inflicted on Ploești. Romanian leaders recognized that Germany could no longer protect their country, and that alignment with the winning side offered better prospects than continuing to support a losing cause. For Germany, losing Ploești accelerated the strategic collapse already underway by summer 1944. Combined with losses of Romanian oil and increasing Allied attacks on synthetic fuel plants inside Germany, the fuel crisis became acute. By early 1945, German forces were virtually immobilized by lack of fuel, hastening final defeat. For the United States Army Air Forces, Ploești became a case study in strategic bombing doctrine. The August 1943 low-level raid entered training curricula as an example of extraordinary courage but questionable planning. The 1944 high-altitude campaign provided valuable lessons in systematic target destruction through sustained attack. The debate over strategic bombing's effectiveness, whether destroying economic targets could defeat an enemy without invasion, found evidence supporting both positions in the Ploești campaign. The raids ultimately destroyed the target but at severe cost and with delayed strategic impact. Behind the casualty figures lie thousands of individual stories. Colonel John Kane, who led his bomb group through the inferno on August 1, 1943, survived the war and lived until 1996, carrying memories of the day 54 bombers didn't return. Lieutenant Colonel Addison Baker and Major John Jerstad, who continued leading their formations while their aircraft burned, died as heroes but left families who mourned them for decades. Their medals of honor provided cold comfort to widows and orphans. Hundreds of American airmen shot down over Romania spent months or years in prisoner-of-war camps. Some were treated reasonably well by Romanian captors who had no particular animosity toward Americans. Others faced harsher conditions, especially after Romania switched sides and German forces took control of POW facilities. Romanian civilians caught between warring powers faced impossible choices. Some helped downed Allied airmen at great personal risk. Others, loyal to their government's alliance with Germany, reported crashed airmen to authorities. After Romania switched sides, those who had helped Allied airmen were vindicated, while those who had opposed them faced recrimination. The Ploești oil raids demonstrate war's brutal arithmetic. Strategic objectives deemed vital enough justify enormous sacrifices. Young men are asked to fly into deadly fire because planners determine that destroying an oil refinery is worth the cost in lives and aircraft. And sometimes, the calculation proves correct, even as the human price seems unbearable. Ploești was destroyed. Germany lost its primary fuel source. Allied strategic bombing contributed to final victory. These facts are indisputable. Whether the specific raids conducted against Ploești were optimally planned and executed remains debatable. What cannot be debated is the courage of those who flew the missions. Men who climbed into bombers knowing that statistics predicted many wouldn't return. Pilots who held formation while aircraft around them exploded. Bombardiers who stayed at their sites while flak tore through their aircraft. Gunners who fought off fighters while their bombers struggled home on damaged engines. Operation Tidal Wave and the subsequent campaign against Ploești represent both the promise and peril of strategic air power. The promise, that sufficient force applied against critical targets can cripple an enemy's war-making capacity. The peril, that achieving strategic objectives requires accepting casualties that would have been unimaginable in earlier eras of warfare. The refineries at Ploești are gone now, destroyed in 1944 and never fully rebuilt to their wartime capacity. The bomb craters have been filled, the wreckage cleared, the environment slowly recovering. But the memory persists, of 178 bombers roaring over Romanian refineries at treetop level, of fires and explosions and aircraft falling from the sky, of extraordinary courage meeting overwhelming firepower, and of the terrible price paid for black gold and strategic necessity.